Hello, beautiful soul, and welcome back to The Voice Within. I am just recording this podcast on Sunday. It's 2:22 afternoon in Bahrain. I didn't have time earlier. And last night, I felt very drained and busy, so I was not really feeling like I want to record anything. But anyway, here I am. Here I am with one interesting topic conversation, however you want to call it. I usually like to call it conversation between you and me every Sunday. So today we're going to talk about suffering. Today I want to open one different perspective on the suffering. I want to offer you my lens, the way I see suffering, and the way basically that perspective changed how I perceive suffering and peace. Last week we were speaking about peace, so this podcast episode is really going nicely into that podcast episode. We unpacked peace, we unpacked what does it mean, how does it feel. Even last week when I was recording podcast episode, I was feeling very peaceful and very quiet. So even when I was listening it later by myself, I felt like, oh my God, I just want to fall asleep with my voice. So this podcast episode is a little bit more like energetic because I am very energetic today and I believe you can feel it in my voice. So let's get back to business. Let's talk about suffering. So what I wanted to share with you today is my view on suffering and how it basically changing my life. So I have suffered a lot in my life. My life was not easy. My life was very tough, especially my childhood and even later in my teenager, in my 20s. It was not easy. But what I see a bit different about me than comparing to the most of the people around me is basically that I never saw my suffering like weapon. You know that feeling when the people behave like they have some more right, that they have some moral right in this world because they suffer, that they feel like a little bit entitled because of their suffering, because what they have survived in their life. However, for me, I never weaponized my suffering. I never saw it like something which puts me in higher moral ground comparing to other people. I always saw my suffering like something which makes me wiser, something which helps me understand myself better, something which kind of makes me stronger. But the more important part is which lesson I always pull from the suffering that is happening in my life or that was happening in my life. Over my life, I have learned that suffering doesn't change people. And we often tend to say, oh, somebody suffered in life, it was hard for them, so they change. I think that processing that suffering or hardship of the life is what changes. I have noticed that most of the people suffering doesn't humble them, but in some way makes them feel entitled. If you observe your society, your environment, you will see that the women who suffered more, they are often considered to be more moral, more relatable, more cherished because of their suffering. But then at the same time, women who choose peace, women who choose ease, women who protect themselves, who don't want to suffer in life, who choose something different from themselves, they are often seen like selfish, weak, not something which everybody can relate to, different than anybody. But when I observe reality of life and when I compare suffering and having some higher moral ground with the suffering and basically choosing intentionally peace in your life, choosing peace actually requires more power and more strength. Why? Because everybody around us is normalizing suffering. Motherhood is hard, marriage is hard, work is hard, life is hard. And if you come between those people and you say, okay, I don't want to normalize this. I want to live different life. I want peace. I want to delegate my work. I want easier motherhood. I want help. I want support. I don't want to suffer. Then you are not relatable. Then that kind of woman is woman who is jumping out of society. She's doing something completely different and society basically doesn't like it. So why society doesn't like it? Because the moment you choose life, which is different from everybody, you become mirror. What I mean by mirror? Basically, people are looking at you and they see that you are living something which they don't dare to live. So instead of them reflecting and understanding, okay, she is doing something possibly better than I do. I cannot face that, so I will try to pull her down on my level, make her basically normalize suffering instead of peace, so I don't have to change. And if you decide to become a woman who choose peace over suffering, what is required from you to do? It's required from you to set boundaries. It's required from you to be authentic. It's required from you to have high standards. A lot of things which are actually higher strength, higher dignity than suffering itself. Suffering is powerful only if we learn from it. But if we weaponize it, then we are basically kind of like making people around us guilty for our suffering, making people around us feeling small because we suffered more than them. But the real power that I discovered in myself is actually going against society, going against expectation and what everybody normalized, and choosing what is right for me. But like I said, that puts us in position where we have to set boundaries, speak, live authentically, hold higher standards ourselves and people around us. And people don't like this. So they will try, like I said, to pull us down so we don't become mirror of their own limitations. So now the question is, why society doesn't want this? Shouldn't be logical that we all want to have peace instead of suffering. Shouldn't be logical that we all choose growth and we choose to live life in peace, in fulfillment, instead of cherishing suffering. And this is my theory, because if society would cherish peace instead of suffering, everything would change. Motherhood wouldn't be any more hard. It would be easier. We would be paying for the help and support, and it would be completely normalized. We all know how much of work, mental work, women are doing. If the woman would start normalizing peace, they would refuse emotional labor for all the family members, for society, reminding, repeating, checking, and correcting. This is the things that all of us we are doing. So if we start choosing peace, then actually people around us have to start doing the things for themselves instead of being continuously reminded about their work. They will have to step into responsibility. And most of the people don't want to do this. Why? Because it's easier when somebody else is doing those things for them. If the woman would start choosing peace over suffering, marriage would become partnership. It would be different in the workplaces. Everything would become completely differently because our society then would adjust to the peace instead of suffering. We wouldn't normalize hard working or long working hours. We wouldn't normalize that the motherhood is by default hard. We wouldn't normalize that marriage sparks, they fade away after few years of marriage because it's life. We would expect from ourselves and people around us more. So as long as we are collectively suffering and normalize suffering and normalizing that it has to be hard, none of us have to change, none of us have to rise. We all stay the same, sitting and thinking how we actually want peace in our life, but we are basically not doing anything what is required from us to have that peace in our life. Why we are not doing it? Again, because once we start doing it, we are not relatable anymore. We are different than anybody. We have to have challenging conversation with the people around us, because those conversations will be conversation about boundaries, and boundaries, they protect our peace. So we avoid this kind of conversation whatsoever, and we sit moralizing and cherishing and putting on the pedestal suffering just so we don't have to basically change collectively. And if you think about it, peace is basically byproduct of boundaries. Peace is byproduct of living authentically. Peace is byproduct of dignity. As long as you're doing these things which are affecting your mental health, which makes you suffer, basically you are not choosing peace for yourself. And for me, I realized this thing very, very long time ago. I learned to take the wisdom from suffering, not wisdom of, oh my God, what did suffering teach me in my life and how am I in the higher ground than anybody else because of my suffering. Suffering actually teach me this. How can I never again have this suffering again in my life? How can I change it? What do I need to do so this thing doesn't happen anymore? And I think most of the people don't think like this. Most of the people sit in the pittiness and, cry over their suffering without trying actually to reflect on it and think about it. What actions I have to take in my life so this thing doesn't repeat anymore. So I protect my peace instead of normalizing suffering. For me, I don't want to live my life proving how much I can endure. I don't want to be cherished for my suffering. I don't want to be seen like somebody who had such a hard life and now she's wiser and she's this and she's that. I want to be remembered, if I can say like that, for living peaceful life, for choosing everything against society, and that everything is actually what protects my peace and my family. I want to be the person who lives differently than anybody, but understanding that this is not a lot of times how other people would live and what would they choose for themselves. We are all free to choose in our life whatever we want, but we also have choices to make in our own life. Do we want to normalize suffering, or we want to take lesson from that suffering and create more peace in our life with the lessons we gain from it? I choose peace regardless of everything. I choose dignity over drama. I choose truth over performance. I choose integrity instead of laziness. I choose all of the things which makes me sleep peacefully at night. This is my standard. This is who I am. And this is who I always was. And I always thought there is some problem with me, that I am like that I am holding myself for such a high standards. And then I see people around me, they are not doing that way. I thought that I am emotional or sensitive, not in the way that I'm better than anybody, far away from that. We are all humans, we all make mistakes. But I always was trying to, create peace, to be peaceful, to don't have problems. And wherever I was going, people didn't see it that way. Suffering was normalized, drama was normalized, performance was normalized. All of these things which steal my peace were normalized. And then I understood it that basically, in order for me to have peace in my life, I have to go in different direction. Not against society, but in different direction. I cannot follow what is normalized in people, in worldwide view, in societies, in cultures. I have to create my own version of peace for myself and my family. And maybe after this podcast episode, you will think about it a little bit. What is your version of peace? How you perceive suffering? Are you taking the lessons from it, or you are holding yourself higher comparing to the other people because of your suffering? Maybe this podcast episode will give you a little bit different perspective this week and give you some wisdom. And if it did, please take it with yourself in this day, run with it, use it in your life. Yeah, that's it. I'm done. I go to have lunch with my family, and wish you a beautiful rest of the day. Until the next week. Bye.